Hi there, my name is Sandy Allnock. I'm an artist, paper crafter, and all-around creative nerd. I blog over at sandyallnock.com. I asked Ellen Hudson if I could sneak in here on her YouTube channel and share the first lesson in my Go for the Gold class over here, because I want to get this out to as many people as are interested in seeing it. The Go for the Gold class exists because I want to make sure that we all get those fancy, cool, awesome, beautiful, shiny gold things that we want before the cold weather hits. Because what I found is that when you ship things in the cold weather and they go through the ice and then they melt, they start to separate. Some of the products have mica in them and they separate and they'll get all goopy and weird. So you want to make sure you get them before the holidays hit and you start working on your holiday cards. So most of the ones in this class are going to be holiday related cards, either fall or winter. The first one is right here, and we're going to make a card today with some modeling paste. The rest of them are going to be on my blog. And at the end of this video, I will invite you to link over to the playlist where all of the videos are going to be. And you can follow my blog, sandyallnock.com, for lots more information. All right? Are you guys ready to get started? Let's do it. These are the supplies I'll be using for the card. And I have the mistletoe and holly stamp set. I've got the folk hearts dies. And the Delicata ink is going to be the gold ink I'm going to use. I love that stuff. And then here's the modeling cream, a modelier crème or modeling paste, it sometimes is called, that we'll be using. And I'm going to cut the ornament for this card out of Craftaboard. Craftaboard is like a sort of thick, I guess, chipboard, you might say, but it's different than chipboard because it's soft and you can actually die cut through it. But it's a really good sturdy surface, and it takes a lot of different kinds of techniques, and you can use it in a lot of different ways than you can't with regular paper. So I've cut the small heart, and then that's the one that's going to be in the front. The one that's going to be in back, I'll just lay over top of it so that I can have them nest together on the ornament that I make. So you can see how they're going to fit together just perfectly as a little puzzle to make the ornament. I want to put the cream on, but I want a surface underneath that's going to be protected, so I'm using my Craft Assistant. It's a 12 by 12 piece of metal, and I'll be using it in different ways during these projects, but this one is just to keep it from making a mess all over the place. And I've put some adhesive on the back of this, not because I'm going to use it, I'll take it off later, but I want to hold it onto the surface and have it up a little bit so that I guess can lift it. I was trying to figure out how to make sure that I could move it off of this surface to set it aside to dry when I'm done. And pressing it with my fingers and stuff made sure it's not going to stick too tightly to the Craft Assistant. So here's the modeling cream, and you can see it's juicy and creamy and delicious and gold and shiny. And I've got a little too much on there, so I'll scrape a little back into the jar. And you want to spread this like frosting. It goes on so smoothly. The texture on it is really smooth and it's super shiny. And depending on the kind of stamp you're going to use with it, you may want a really smooth surface to it. So you'll want to be real careful and do it really flat if you're going to use something with a really regular texture like polka dots or something that you want it to be really flat and even. On this one, I'm going to be using a whimsical poinsettia stamp, so it doesn't need to be super smooth. And that's good for me because smoother is going to be harder to do. But just getting a good coating on this, and then taking all the excess and wiping it back into the jar because you can reuse this paste. You don't want to waste any of it because it's beautiful, delicious, gold and shiny, and we don't want any of that to disappear. So next I'm going to take a mister and just spritz a little bit of water on here because that's going to help my stamp not to stick to the modeling paste because I don't want it to get so stuck in there that it pulls it all up. Don't ask me how I figured that out. So I'm stamping my flower into the surface and then wiping it off in between because you want to make sure that you don't leave any of that modeling cream inside your stamp because that will get it all dry and crusty and you won't be able to stamp with it anymore. And so I'm going to clean it between each a little bit and turn it different directions so I get a beautiful pattern on my heart. And then after I'm finished, I'm going to clean it really good. I'm going to get down into the grooves. It did discolor my stamp a little bit, but the stamp worked just fine and inked up just well. After I finished this, I tested it to make sure I didn't ruin anything. And you can see the delicious texture and color that I've got on this heart. So I've set it aside for quite a few hours to be sure it's good and dry so I don't mess anything up. For the other heart, I wanted to use a stencil and just use a lighter application of the same paste. So they match, but they'll look very different. And I played around with where to align the stencil. I wasn't really sure how I wanted to do that. I wanted to have enough of the gold showing, so I needed enough open areas. And I just moved it around until I was happy with what I was seeing so that I could get enough of the gold paste on there. And then just pressed it through with the palette knife, spread it around, and it's about the same thickness as the stencil. So it's not super thick and goopy. And then I set that one aside to dry too. I also wanted to fake some gold paper because sometimes you want gold paper, but you don't want to use a whole sheet or that sort of thing. And a couple of the products that I found that were these gold pastes, I realized you could just put some of them on the card base. And I wanted a little line on two sides of the card. I'm going to put a panel over this, but I wanted the paper to look like it was gold. And so I just lined the edges. Now I could have done 1/4 of an inch. I kind of did overkill there, but you'll see how that plays out later. It's going to look like this is on a layer of gold paper. So these are the stamps that I'm going to use, the rest of the set that I already used the poinsettia from. And my sentiment is going to be the Be Merry, stamped in the Gold Delicata ink. The Gold Delicata is one of the inks. When I tested a bunch of different gold inks, this one actually looked the most gold. And by that I mean there are some of them that look like a gold color, but they don't have a shimmer to them. Or they may have a shimmer and they seem like very dry pads. I think gold is probably very hard to formulate in a really good way so that it stays good and juicy. But the Delicata seems to have tackled that problem and made it work very well. So it's very pretty ink. And next I wanted to stamp some trees in the background because there's this cute little branch in this stamp set. And I'm stamping the background ones in an ink by Mama Elephant. It's a pigment ink called Winter, is the name of it. Can you guess why? It's only the perfect blue for winter. If you're doing any snowmen or anything, this is a great color to have in your collection. And then I wiped off the ink so I could change to Mojito and add some more branches to it. So both of these are by Mama Elephant. And the Mojito is a nice bright green, which I thought contrasted very well with all the gold on the card. So it gives it that Christmas look without adding the traditional red. So I liked that this card doesn't have any of the traditional red on it. And I'm doing some second generation stamping as well because this ink does that beautifully. Second generation is when you stamp once and then stamp a second time without re-inking, and you end up with a lighter color. So I've got 2 shades of green for the price of 1, which is pretty awesome. So I'm just going to fill in a little bit more. I'm trying to decide where I want my tree branch to end and then get ready to start adding the rest of the pieces together. By now my hearts are dry. It has been quite a while. Time lapse here was not the time in the video, so it took quite a bit to dry, but they did fit together perfectly, and I knocked all the excess little pieces of gold off the edges to clean it all up, and now I'm ready to adhere it. I had to figure out how to get a really good adhesive on the back of that heart so the two of them would stay together. So I did a reverse kind of thing. I put my Be Creative tape on the front of the die cut instead of the back this time because I wanted that facing the heart. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but if you do what I did, I have a whole bunch of hearts die cut the wrong way with this adhesive on the back. And I wanted the adhesive on the front so I could do this and add this heart to the very, very front and glue it down. This stuff is so sticky. If I don't get this on here right the first time, I'm not going to get it back off to be able to redo it. But then when I put the second little heart in there, that is going to hold like forever. This Be Creative tape just does not let go. So I'm going to do a quick little burnish, and this ornament is going to remain together for a long, long, long time to come. And the last step for the ornament portion is to put something to hang it on. You could put a Christmas tree hanger in it, or what I decided to do was to use some lawn trimmings. This is hemp cord from Lawn Fawn, and this one in particular has gold flecks in it. And I thought that would be a nice little treat to add to the front of the card. That adds a little more of the gold to it, since that is the shiny part of this card. I thought that would just be a really nice touch on the end of my ornament. So I've got a knot at the base and a knot at the top, and somebody who receives this can then hang that directly on their tree or wherever they would like to decorate with it. So I've kind of got my pieces laid out just so I can make sure everything works design-wise, and it's time to start adhering it all together. So I've got my panel, my stamped panel ready to go. And as I was doing this, I was putting my stamp runner down all along the edges and I was all ready to adhere it together. And I kept thinking, I forgot something. What did I forget? Oh, forgot to put the other panel on the front. So I wanted to put a piece of vellum across the front to hold the ornament in place. And so I've got all this sticky on the back. I'm trying to avoid getting unstickied. And unfortunately, I just had to lay it down on something so I could poke some holes in it. I'm just going to poke 2 holes on either one on either side with a piercer and put brads in it. And I thought about putting the brads closer to the hearts so they would solely hold the hearts in place. But I thought that would look a little weird to have them kind of in the middle of the card, so I wanted them out to the edge. And I just took a little tiny bit of stamp runner and put it on the card so that hearts will generally stay in place, and then the person will be able to easily remove them and hang the ornament on their tree. And you can see how nice it looked now that I've put it on that card base where I had that little bit of gold sticking out of the edge. So it looks like this is on gold paper when really it was just a little bit of that paste. So you can do lots of little decorations with a paste like this to add to your card without having to go buy other products. You can just make other items, other embellishments out of the gold modeling cream. Thanks so much for joining me for the first card in the Go for the Gold class. Please click on the link in the description for the blog post containing product links, a bonus project, and information on a sale going on for the duration of the 7-day class. There's also a link to my blog post that talks about prize giveaways during class, as well as sharing 3 of the top mistakes I think are made by crafters. You're not going to want to miss out on that. So I'll see you all week in class. Don't be late. Bye-bye now.